I'd like to welcome my panelists and invite them to briefly introduce yourselves, share a little bit about your work and your organization, how it relates to either stablecoins, CBDCs, or payment tokens.
Would you like me to kick off?
Yeah.
Erin, thanks so much. My name is David Puth. I couldn't be happier to be here. I'm the CEO of a small company called Center. And Center is a standards organization that was put together by Coinbase and Circle with the idea of developing governance standards and frameworks to be able to ultimately create a global network of interoperable stablecoins, starting with USDC. So USDC launched in 2018. It currently has about $54 billion outstanding in market cap. And our eventual goal at Center is to continue to expand into other stablecoins around the globe.
Okay. Morning, everyone. Might be afternoon now. Neil Chopra. I actually started my career in corporate treasury, so really saw a lot of the inefficiencies in the global banking space and how traditional banks were delivering products and services to their end users. And so from there, I moved over to Ripple in 2017. So very much focused on cross-border payments and how digital assets and blockchain technology could make a much more efficient, basically workflow and customer experience, whether it was small businesses, large corporates, or retail consumers. And then beginning of last year, joined Fireblocks, where I lead our solutions and advisory team. And what Fireblocks is doing is essentially providing direct or self-custody digital asset infrastructure that allows financial institutions to manage their digital asset businesses. And so a big focus for us is on the payments ecosystem, because we do see the value that blockchain can bring to that particular segment. So excited for this discussion and everything that we're seeing out in the payments and stablecoin space.
Right. Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Jeff Bandman. I have a consulting firm called Bandman Advisors. I'm also a partner in an NFT asset management business with one of the leading thought leaders and collectors around NFTs, known as Punk 6529. And I also do teaching and training for regulators. Have recently been doing training seminars for regulators on international standards for market infrastructures called the PFMIs, or Principles for Financial Market Infrastructures. And I've also been teaching in the US and in Europe. Previously, I was a regulator at the CFTC, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, where I was responsible for launching Lab CFTC, which is the CFTC's innovation hub, where I sort of worked on a mix of market infrastructure and fintech innovation. And prior to that, I was a financial services lawyer and then business executive, worked in New York and London, rebuilt Cantor Fitzgerald's market data business after 9/11. And I'd say in the NFT space, we actually have been using stablecoins more than one might have expected, not for yield farming or anything like that, but just in the course of getting businesses off the ground, or often our investors prefer to fund using stablecoins rather than fiat.
Thanks so much. Like I said, we have a great panel for you. So let's start with talking about stablecoins. There's been a lot going on in this space, starting up a lot of debate this past month with the Terra Luna collapse. I think the audience would love to hear your viewpoints on this and how it's impacted your respective work and your respective communities. But perhaps, since it's such a complex situation, it might be helpful to the audience to establish a little bit the various different types of stablecoins, because there are different types. They're not all one and the same. So could you please share with us a little bit about what are the different kinds and why are some more vulnerable to instability than others?
Sure. So I think I was asked to kind of start this off, so to just give a couple of kind of definitions of stablecoins. So in terms of the definition of stablecoin itself, I thought it'd be helpful to just go to the precise one and read it. So there's a definition of stablecoin that's in common use from international regulators, used by the Financial Stability Board, the Bank for International Settlements. It's the one that was used in the President's Working Group report that came out last November. And the definition says stablecoins are digital assets that are designed to maintain a stable value relative to a national currency or other reference assets. So what's kind of interesting, just looking at that definition, is that, it's a pretty broad definition, but it didn't really meet what I was asked to do to kick off the panel, which was not only to talk about what a stablecoin is, but to talk about the different types of stablecoins. And I think in terms of the definitions, there's not necessarily a single standardized set of these. I've seen taxonomies in having, some kind of totally agreed definitions. But so the source that I went back to that I thought was kind of most helpful in laying these out was the report that the Block put out in March of 2021. And so they defined stablecoins into three categories. Seems like it's very natural to divide things into threes. Even Julius Caesar did that. And so the three definitions are fiat collateralized. And fiat collateralized means that it is backed one way or another by a fiat currency. The structure of the fiat backing, there are a lot of different models for that, but the general concept is that it's underpinned by a fiat currency. Then you have a second category, which is referred to generally as crypto collateralized, sometimes referred to as over collateralized. These are often stable coins that are backed by another cryptocurrency, typically in excess of the value. And then finally, the third, and the one that's gotten a lot of attention lately, are non-collateralized stablecoins, which are also, sometimes referred to as, the algorithmic stablecoins. And so the definition that they use there, which I think is a good one, non-collateralized stablecoins, sometimes called algorithmic stablecoins, have a flexible supply, which is governed by an algorithm that incentivizes market participants to buy or sell in order to maintain price stability of the intended currency. And so this is, although it sounds like a new concept, and in crypto it was introduced in a paper by Robert Sams of Clearmatics in 2014, really this is akin to something that's been very common in financial markets, which is pegging of one thing to another. So one example of a peg was when the Swiss franc was pegged to the euro until it wasn't. They were decoupled in January of 2015. And it wasn't necessarily that every Swiss franc was backed by a euro, but the Swiss National Bank had committed to buy enough euros or sell enough, of the currencies so they could maintain that equilibrium at a fixed rate. And that was personally memorable for me because that was my first all-nighter at the CFTC when some firms that had exposure to these that were regulated by the CFTC, found that they were in financial difficulty. So those are the three main categories.
Yeah, and so what's happened with Terra Luna is it's an algorithmic stablecoin that basically lost that peg, right? And so that's the issue there. So thank you for that, Jeff. Recently, I read that Reeve Collins, the co-founder of Tether and BlockFi, said that this could be actually the end of all algorithmic stablecoins. What do you all think about that?
I'll take an early shot at that. The term algorithmic stablecoin, almost by definition, is one that is hard to reconcile. So as Jeff highlighted, currency regimes over many millennia have not been able to maintain a specific peg. There are some exceptions to that exist today, but it is extremely difficult to maintain a perfect peg, particularly based on a mathematical formula and not on something that was fully backed. And so it's probably a reasonable segue into what are we trying to do with USDC? And there are other fiat-backed stablecoins out there, but USDC is backed by US dollar securities, bank deposits, and other very liquid instruments in excess of the amount that's outstanding. So if a holder of USDC comes to redeem their USDC for a US dollar, that US dollar is available to them nearly instantly. There may be some operational things that need to take place, but at no point in time does the amount of US dollars supporting USDC ever go below the amount that's outstanding, and that could not happen. It's also attested to by Grant Thornton on a monthly basis, so the public can see both generally what the instruments are that are contained supporting USDC, but as well the fact that there is an excess. There's at least a minimum of the same number of dollars behind USDC that there is USDC outstanding.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, perfect example is if you need to redeem your stablecoin for fiat, you want to have trust that you'll be able to do so. And at the end of the day, I think regulations are very much trying to catch up with the technology. And is there a place for algorithmic stablecoins in the future? Maybe. I think that remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, I think the trust and the scalability of stablecoins is going to really be driven by the regulatory landscape and really the auditability of them. So if I'm Circle and I'm issuing a stable coin that is backed by US dollars and other assets, who is going in there to verify and validate that those assets are truly there and that they truly are liquid? When you have an algorithmic stable coin that's backed by crypto and some mathematical equation, I think that is very much in this experimentation phase. We were talking about it backstage is I'm going to create a stable coin. I'm going to then create some magical asset that will back this that is now mathematically calculating. And the only reason people are throwing money into this is because they're trying to chase gains and yields. And so that's where you start to see this ramp up of volume and total value locked in a lot of these different protocols, where it's folks that are just trying to gain access to yield products. And at the end of the day, that needs to be regulated. How far away we are from that, I don't know. And so I think with the president's working group over the past couple of months, we've seen some at least preliminary guidance. And I do think that we're starting to move more towards a global framework where a lot of the regulatory bodies globally are saying, well, if you're going to issue a stablecoin in our country, you're going to be a regulated financial institution, and we need to ensure that consumers, businesses that are accessing this stablecoin through you will be able to redeem this for fiat on the back end, no matter what happens.
Yeah. And I think we can assume that that regulation will be present within a year, not just in the U.S., but potentially internationally. And this is exactly what Center was established to do, was to be able to create standards that would be in some way anticipatory about what regulators would eventually bring. Once regulation becomes more clear, the standards that Center will devise will be things that regulators hadn't necessarily thought of. So our standards were always intended to be additive to regulation, not a substitute for.
Yeah, if I can, add to that. I mean, I think there's clearly, it's something that's been, there's been a lot of, interest at the international level, particularly since, Facebook, now Meta, announced the now abandoned, Libra project in June, probably almost exactly 3 years ago to the day, which was a humongous catalyst both for all the central bank work on CBDCs as well for the development of international standards for stablecoins, especially for sort of significant scale stablecoins that can be adopted on mass scale. I think in terms of the regulation, I mean, I certainly support the development of international standards. Like I said, some of these seminars looking at the applicability of existing standards for financial market infrastructures, particularly again for very stable, significant stablecoins, will be useful. I do think it's an interesting dynamic where even after the collapse of Terra, where people have a lot of questions about it, but for the last few years, the main people who are seeking kind of regulatory standards for stablecoins are primarily governments, central banks, finance ministries. It hasn't really been the users of stablecoins. I will say that users of stablecoins have voted with their feet by, if you look at just kind of the increase of market cap of USDC, right? That is people have increased use of something that they believe is more transparent and is more clearly regulated. I guess the last thought I would add on this is, around this the algorithmic stablecoins. Like, I think people are really in the digital asset community and the decentralized community, are ideologically motivated to come up with something that is done by code and that works based on code as opposed to that's based on kind of human activity. And it's hard to tell whether the people kind of behind this, whether there was a scam or not a scam, whether there was an attack. You kind of expect attacks. But I do think people will continue to try to experiment with algorithmic stablecoins, out of the desire to promote decentralization unless the regulatory regime absolutely precludes it. But I think that those are, probably now, especially after this past experience, best viewed as experiments until they're really tested.
And I think to add to that as well, it's not like this is a new concept, right? If we look back to 2008, regulation is really built on the failure of certain things that happen. And so we see the subprime crisis. There's now regulations in place to make sure that that doesn't happen again. It's very similar in this space where there's a lot of experimentation, people doing new things. And so at the end of the day, I think this will help to guide a lot of the regulations that we will see. And to be honest, across all different markets, as there's issues that arise, as there's collapses, that will sort of foster and create new regulations to help protect consumers. And so I don't know that this is a one-off. I don't know that this is very specific to crypto and blockchain at all. I think we see this really across the board and something that regulators will take note of and hopefully in the future, hopefully in the near future, be able to help put a framework around it.
Aside from the sort of protections that would help against this sort of specific situation, what are you all looking for in terms of regulation that would help with advancing the use and adoption of these kinds of services for users?
Well, there's already quite a bit of regulation that is associated with payments in general. And I think that once we are able to apply some, Jeff mentioned the PFMIs, I think that's the clearest place to look. The DFS in New York came out several weeks ago with some guidance. All of this will enable people to gain greater trust in stablecoins overall. And that, again, part of what Sender was put in business to do was to ensure that we were able to create trust. And so I think this is going to start to open up the world of payments. Now, it has another impact, and that is it levels the playing field in terms of participants who are willing and able to make the investments to become regulated to the extent that is necessary to be able to participate in the space. And so I would expect that if stablecoins continue to be an attractive means of payment, that you'll see many more players step into the space and issuing their own stablecoins following the regulation that's being devised now. But it will certainly open up various payment applications.
Yeah, I think looking at sort of blockchain technology in general, it's a huge value add to financial markets. I think the transparency, the auditability, I think regulators a couple of years ago were saying, illicit activity on blockchain with Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. No, you can track and trace everything that happens. You had talked about Terra and, was there malpractice there? Did something happen? We can find that out. We can track what's happening, where assets are being moved to and from. And so that's all going to come to light. And I think that's a really, really, really interesting concept. And so at the end of the day, we can't regulate the technology, but we do need to find a way to regulate the on and off ramps. Fiat is not going away in the short or medium term. And so when we see the application and the use of digital assets for payments, I think there's a huge value add. Fireblocks, as an example, is accepting invoice payments from about 40% of our clients in stablecoin. We have international customers all across the globe. A US dollar wire is the most inefficient payment that you can make. And so if I can send that in seconds using USDC on Stellar for fractions of a penny versus 4 days and a $50 wire through my correspondent banking relationship, which one do you think I'm going to choose? And so the ability to leverage digital assets and cryptocurrencies and blockchain within the payments ecosystem, I think, is monumental, and it's really going to shift the way that financial markets operate, bringing T+1, 2, 3 down to 0. And so it's really figuring out these on and off ramps and the best way to regulate those.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that you don't have one size fits all regulation. One size fits all is not going to be right for this particular product. And again, it's not the users of the product who are primarily the ones who are calling for regulation. It's the people who are going to impose the regulations who are doing it. But in the Senate hearings last December, after the president's working group came out, you had sort of the recommendation of the president's working group, which it was a bit of a schizophrenic report because part of it said, hey, these could be securities, these could be commodities, these could be commodity interests, they could be commodity derivatives, they could be But then it went and said, but we're going to have these issued and essentially by bank or bank-like things. The benefit of that was at least they're not saying these things are a bunch of securities, because if they're a bunch of securities, nobody can use them for payments. If you're transmitting payments, you need to be a broker-dealer, an investment advisor, and you get this whole, kind of set of, regulatory framework. So, not having a one-size-fits-all framework, I think, is going to be important to allow people to, continue to innovate in this space. But there's no question of efficiency.
I really want to add to that, in that we believe firmly in this idea that fiat-backed stablecoin using our frameworks is the safest way that business can be done. But I couldn't agree more that we need to see continued innovation in the space. We're so early in this development that there will be better ideas and things that we couldn't even conceive of today that will become the norm in several years.
So Neil, real quick, from the institutional perspective of your community, do you see that with the last couple months, it remains unchanged, sort of the enthusiasm, given everything, or is there maybe a little bit of hesitancy? Like, what have you seen from that perspective?
Yeah, I think this is a really good reset. Not that what's happening in the markets today is a positive, but at the end of the day, if we look back to 2018, the rise of ICOs, the regulation around ICOs, and then what came from that, NFTs, DeFi, all of these new innovations leveraging blockchain technology. And so I think over the next 6 to 12 months, we're really going to start to see a lot of new innovation in this space. And so that's really what we're seeing right now is this concept of a lot of our institutional customers, a lot of our crypto native customers kind of going heads down to say, okay, well, what's the next thing? And I do think it's somewhere in this Web3 realm, whatever we want to call that. But I think the other side of this is when we look at banks, everything happening over the past few years, they were very, very hesitant because they didn't know where this was going. They didn't know what was happening. And what we're now starting to see is a lot more interest and actually a number of projects around stablecoins and just general tokenization. And so I think this has given a pause to the market, but has also let people realize that, hey, we've got these 20,000 tokens out there. What's the utility and usage of them? Who knows? I think 99% of them should probably not exist. But it's now taking, okay, we can delineate crypto and blockchain. And I think from an institutional perspective, we're starting to see a number of folks globally starting to really realize blockchain technology is going to create more efficiencies. So how can we leverage this within our existing businesses?
That's great. That's great to hear. Well, time is flying by because you all have so much to say. So I want to touch on CBDCs a little bit, and then I will take a question from the audience if there is one. So think of that in the meantime. Let's touch on central bank digital currencies and how they relate to stablecoins. Because there's a few fundamental questions being asked there as well, with debates on either side. Some asserts, like we've heard Dante at Circle say at Consensus last week, that CBDCs are a preposterous idea, and that stablecoins will establish basically the market share by then and become like a proxy CBDC in a way. Others say that when CBDCs are launched, they actually will end stablecoins and replace them. So what are your thoughts here? Are CBDCs and stablecoins in conflict with each other, or can they be complementary to each other?
I excuse me, I feel this is the most oft asked question I've had since coming to Center. And I feel very strongly that stablecoins and central bank digital currencies will peacefully coexist at some point in the future. The key element here, and with all respect to my colleague Dante, stablecoins are here today. And generally speaking, regulators, policymakers would like to see really innovative private sector solutions come in to see if those can work. And today, stablecoins are working very effectively. There are also some unique experiments going on with central bank digital currencies at a wholesale level in various corners of the globe that I think, and we'll put China aside, but in other parts of the globe that could be quite effective for wholesale payment functions. So I see a world where stablecoins and CBDCs are interacting with one another. I also think it's going to be a long way off before a US dollar central bank digital currency is something that can come to pass.
I think the wholesale piece is really interesting. At the end of the day, do you want a central bank issuing a digital currency that they can then control? Do you want direct to retail CBDCs where they can say, oh, we'll send you this money or you can have access to this money, but we can restrict when and how you use it? That's not going to fly in 99% of the world. But is there value in a central bank issuing wholesale CBDCs to banks who can then in turn leverage a stablecoin off of the back of that? I think that is ultimately where this ends up. How long that's going to take, I don't know. But from just a privacy and just a consumer perspective, I don't know that a direct to retail CBDC, there's any appetite for that in most of the world. But I do think the wholesale piece of it, I do think being able to drive monetary policy through this technology and through these protocols, there is value in it. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to see direct to retail. I think it's very much going to be focused on wholesale.
So I could see it evolving, in both directions. I think they could peacefully coexist if governments aren't threatened by them and don't seek to eliminate them and seek to have a monopoly position. And it's funny, like when I used to work for Christian Carlo, who spoke earlier, and I remember, before he sort of left the agency and got involved in the digital dollar project, he gave a number of talks about crypto regulation, and he sort of quoted the principle of 90s internet regulation, which was first, do no harm. And, that really resonated with me. And so I sort of have been thinking about central bank digital currencies through that lens. And it really is impossible for me to see how central bank digital currencies first do no harm. I can see how it can be sort of a useful tool of government policy, but it seems to be something that could be easily abused to implement a social credit system, a system where you lose access to the payment rails or the ability to transact, even without potential due process. I think about the way the Canadian trucker protesters and then the people who donated to them were essentially kind of deplatformed from the financial industry. And, I never thought something like that could happen in the West. I could understand it happening in China. So I think there need to be a lot of safeguards before I could be convinced that first do no harm is safe here.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Is there a quick question or I can wrap
I think over
up?
there's someone.
Someone? Go ahead.
So I'm just reading off my laptop. So Circle actually announced today a fully reserved euro-backed stablecoin. I know you guys just said not today, but the guys behind me from the District of New York. Any thoughts?
On Circle's issuance of a euro stablecoin? Well,
Yeah.
we've been working with Circle on this for some time. It's an exciting next step for stablecoins globally. As I think people are aware, there are any number of different stablecoins being issued around the globe today. That's been happening over the last 2 or 3 years. There are other euro stablecoins, but I think Circle, given its leadership role with USDC, this is a very exciting next step and the beginning of the process that I indicated earlier about creating this global network of interoperable stablecoins.
Yeah, and I think the really exciting part, just from my treasury background, is looking at it to say, I don't now need a banking relationship in every single geography that I operate in. If I can, within my Fireblocks wallet, hold USDC and Euro C, now I have access and the ability to pay all of my Euro and US vendors directly. I don't need to source Euro from a bank and then use a legacy payment rail. So I think it's really exciting. And as we start to see more of these different fiat-backed stable coins developed, I think it's really going to start to change the landscape of payments.
There are many more to come. Yeah.
Okay, final thoughts, real quick, very short answers since we're out of time. What are a couple things that you hope out of this sort of downturn and all the shifts in the industry that you hope we come out of it sort of learning or having changed in the industry?
Kick that off.
I think we've been through crypto winters before. This is the first one that's coincided with what looks like a big, macro downturn and 70s style inflation that I'm sadly old enough to remember. But I do think people will keep building. In payments, in stable coins, in private solutions, and then hopefully I think one of the things that's been really exciting and that relates to that. Stable coins are perhaps the first manifestation of, kind of the blockchain as internet of value, where you can transfer things that are not just information, but actual value. NFTs, I think, are the next step, and that will be the transition layer to Web3, because NFTs are property rights for non-fungible objects, and most of the world is actually non-fungible. In financial services, we're used to things being commoditized and fungible, but the ability to move non-fungible assets around at the speed of the internet, and also to have an ownership society where instead of licensing things from Amazon and Apple, you can actually own your own digital objects. I think it's going to be really transformative and will be one of the major projects in the next 5 to 10 years.
A really short answer, I think focus. Again, 20,000 cryptocurrencies out there. What are they used for? Nothing. And so at the end of the day, there's real utility in the technology. So I hope the cream rises to the crop. I hope we see some really interesting innovation over the next year or so. And similar to what happened in 2018, I think we're going to see a lot of really, really cool and exciting applications coming out of it that will really transform financial markets.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, because I couldn't agree more, that this is shaking out a tremendous number of very weak projects and will allow the very strong projects to emerge, get better funding, get more support, and be able to grow. And so nobody ever likes this term healthy correction is a little bit of an oxymoron, but there are elements of this that should be extremely positive for the long-term value of what's happening in crypto and in blockchain in general. And I just add, what I think this is a reminder of for all of us is people talk about what inning we're in terms of the development of blockchain technology. And I think this reminds us that we are very, very early in the game, and there's just so much to go from here.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, Neil, and David. It's been a really interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.